Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be getting into starting, takeoff, taxi, and a little bit about navigation in our lovely DC-3 here. Now for the purposes of this video, we are using the classic version, not the retrofit version, so some of the options will be a little different if you opt for that version. So let's get started. So first things first, like I was saying last time, make sure you take the time to get your seat properly. I have external instruments, so the seating position doesn't really bother me too much. So this aircraft is pretty straightforward to get going. It's nothing scary. Like when I first sat down, I'm like, why is it like, why there's a lot of like kind of those, but in general, it's really not that bad to get started. So what I'm going to do is kind of a classic flow. We're going to kind of start down and make our way up and then come back around as well. So swing it over on this side. First thing we want to do is we want to get our cowl flaps nice and open up here. This is an important concept for us because we need to keep the engine within their operating temperatures at all times. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Next, of course, I'm going to go float over here. I wish I could just get rid of this thing. If I remember the shortcut key. There it goes. It's gone. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of float down here. I'm going to snap this switch, which is going to secure the aircraft. We can also like open doors and stuff like that and kind of have a fun time. Not worried about it too much. I'm going to confirm my carburetor heat is in the forward position. I'm going to go ahead and select the fuel tank being to the right. I'm going to go ahead and set this one to the left because we're on the left side. Make sure it actually pops over. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack the throttles just a tiny bit. We're going to set our pitch control all the way forward. Now, the mixture handles on this are a little funky. If you look really carefully here, you're going to notice that there's an emergency, an automatic rich, and an automatic lean setting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this all the way forward for this particular purpose. There it goes. That looks pretty good there. I'm going to float down here. Did I knock my pitch trim out of whack here? According to this, I did not, so I'm not going to stress about it too much. All right, that's looking good. We're going to make sure our parking brake is set. You just push the pedals down and pull that back. Looks pretty good to me. That's looking pretty groovy. I'm going to turn my head behind me and check my hydraulic system, make sure there's nothing fancy as far as the handles. Nah, nothing looks too bad here. And I'm just going to slowly make my way over towards the left. My engine instruments are all set, and there's nothing too stressful that I need to go two nutters over down here, so I'm liking that real good. All right, we're going to make our way up to the tippy top here, and we're going to start on the left side here. First thing I'm going to do is activate the ground power. Now, the ground power doesn't power everything. It basically gives us a couple little options that we can use here. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on my position light just to kind of let everybody know I'm about to get started. Now, as a pilot, my instinct is to go for the primer first, but for whatever reason, when they designed this particular model of this aircraft, they said, nah, don't do that. Okay, I won't. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my way over to these two switches. I'm going to go ahead and pop my magnetos on. There we are. I'm going to make sure my master ignition is in. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my head down, make sure everything's good. It is. Okay, let's take a look at this. So this is a little bit of an interesting process for us here. The first things first is we have the two fuel boost pumps. So right now we have absolutely zero fuel flow. We want to get a little bit of fuel flowing into towards the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the pumps so you can hear them get nice and loud. And it's also going to give us enough fuel pressure to go ahead and start this thing pretty safely. Now, the starter process, it's old school. It's in what they call an inertial starter. So I'm going to go ahead and open the window so I can hear it. So what we're going to do is we're going to engage the starter by getting basically a giant flywheel spinning. And then we're going to press the mesh switch to cause the flywheel to connect to the actual engine itself. Now, when this happens, it's interesting. So in the real world, what we would do, of course, is we come up here, we'd hit the switch, look at our two voltage gauge and our amperage gauge, and they go, oh. And when those started to come back up, that would tell us we're up to speed. We're going to have to go old school and actually listen. So I'm going to go ahead and push it to the right position. Doing its thing. And got it. Told you. Not bad. So now we're going to go ahead and activate the battery switch here. Now we have a battery. We can shut off the ground power. Oh, we don't need that anymore. I'm just going to give it just a little bit of power. Sweet. And we're going to repeat the same on the left side here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that to that position. Like I said, normally we'd watch these needles getting pretty mad at us here. I can hear it. That sounds good. Wait for it. There it goes. Told you. I trusted. I knew it was going to get going. Just tries to stress you out a little bit to make sure you're paying attention. All right, this is good. We're going to confirm that they're off. Those are both off. Fuel boost pumps can stay on at this point. I'm not going to stress about it. Things we want to look at for, of course, is we're going to get to about 1,000 RPM. We're going to double check to make sure the oil pressure is coming up, which it is. All the temperature is coming up, which it should. Carburetor temperature, I don't know how on earth it could be that high. It must be like over somebody's campfire or something like that. That's a little excessive, but it's all good. All right, we've got a good start. Everything's ready to rock electrically. We're just going to float my head over here. I'm going to go pop on the inverter. We have the Carb Ant Auto Anti-Icing System, which we can go ahead and enable if we wanted. We have a couple of things here. We could set up some radios or anything along those lines, kind of getting ready. Speaking of radios, our navigational techniques, we have no GPS. I sort of miss GPS. But at the same token, it's nothing too scary. When a lot of people look at this, they get all kind of panicky, like, oh, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to do this? Don't worry, you have ADF and VOR, and that's exactly what we're going to use today. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to go up to my handy-dandy Collins nav. We're going to be flying over to Providence today. So I'm going to go ahead and say 11560. This is pretty old school. So when you go ahead and tap that button, we're going to push this button in to switch between the two. Now, when I've done that, if I float my head down here, you'll probably notice... I don't have this problem with the real blade. So what we do is we float down here, and you're going to notice that at this time we have no indication on here. The reason we've got no indication is because we are actually too low right now to actually pick anything up. So one of the things we can do, of course, is we can switch to the two modes. I think it's kind of neat that it fixes that too, which, I don't know, I just think that's kind of nice. And this would be, of course, a good time to go ahead and dial in your desired heading that we're going to be traveling. For us, we're going to be traveling, it's basically going to be east, so I'm just going to kind of set that real quick. Of course, remember, until you actually have an electrical signal from the VOR station, you're not going to get much of anything. But it does kind of help to make it a little bit more obvious once we get up in the air there. All right, that's looking pretty good. Engine's running smoothly. I've got about 1,000 RPM. If we wanted to, we could lean the mixtures out a little bit to kind of save us a little bit of trouble. Don't bother with the superchargers. They can't do anything for us at this time. Good check on the cow flaps. Make sure those guys are nice and open and ready to rock there. Yeah, look at them. Nice and happy cow flaps. Love it. So those guys are looking good, nice and warm. Just checking temperatures are kind of low. Maybe actually we want to give this kind of help it along here. We'll set this to the trail position. There we go. Nice. All right, so with an aircraft this large, you have to be really careful when you're going around on the ground here. One of the things that I was really surprised with is the fact that the tail wheel actually is really flexible and it moves around great. Doesn't mean it's like, let's go, but now I'm going to pop out the two booster pumps here just so I can hear myself think a little bit. So I'm going to go get myself a nice comfortable position. I'll release the parking brake. So now for us, I'm going to go ahead and push the rudder pedal all the way forward, and I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of thrust on the right side of the aircraft, I should say the starboard side, to go ahead and kind of kick us around. Because our temperatures are low and our pressures are very low, we have to really take our time. Now, if you want, you can always pop over to cheat vision here and kind of use the bird's eye view in order to get this thing safely navigating. Keep in mind, we don't normally have that much control of that tail wheel, so enjoy it, because it's tricky. Because we are a conventional landing gear aircraft, we really have to come out pretty far before we can kick the tail over to kind of line us up so that we can actually do this safely. Now, some of you are probably saying, do we need to use any sort of takeoff flaps or anything? I couldn't actually find anything suggesting that you do need to use takeoff flaps in this, which kind of doesn't surprise me, given that the flaps are the split flap variety. But one thing we will do during takeoff, of course, is help ourselves out a little bit by using locking that tail wheel up. So we're just going to go ahead and taxi on, completely conventional. Of course, we're popping on the runway here. We should probably be polite. There we go. Pop that on, just take a look around. Looks pretty good. Approach is clear. I shut off traffic, so if the approach wasn't clear, I'd get a little nervous. Exactly. One last time, of course, double check everything to make sure it's looking pretty good. Everything should be about in the green. All the temperatures are still a little on the low side. Nothing bad, just low. All right, give it a kick. I'm going to push the nose over. Remember that steering from the back here. This is like reverse. This is like if you've ever tried to paddle a canoe from the front. It's the same kind of steering situation. All right, just going to line ourselves up with the runway. This thing doesn't need much runway, but it still needs some. Go ahead and pull back on the controls, apply the brakes. You do not want to do a face plant. It's really embarrassing in this particular aircraft. All right, that's all set. I'm going to come float down here. We still have no evidence of this actually working yet. That's okay, though. We're going to get in the air in a minute. Checked a couple quick idiot checks to make sure everything's okay. One thing I definitely want to check is I want to double check all my trims to make sure they're okay here. I'm going to come up to my elevator control. I'm going to make sure I didn't do anything silly with the pitch trim. Go ahead and give that a quick little whack. It should be moving pretty quick. That's going to be pitch nose up. That's going to be pretty neutral in that particular position right there. Like I said, you really do not want the surprise when you go ahead and give this thing power and all of a sudden it's pitching out of control and you can't get anything going. All right, so before takeoff, we're going to go ahead and flip open the cow flaps here. We want to get them nice and wide. Once we start climbing, of course, we can decrease it. Now, let's talk about power here. If we wanted to keep this safe, we could actually take off using basically the green range here. But what we're going to do is we're going to come up to here. This is going to be our maximum power setting, 46, 47, 48 inches of mercury. And of course, we're going to use maximum RPM, which is going to be 2,700 on the RPM scale. So that's enough. That's enough. All right, let's do it. So the way we do this is, since we are a twin engine plane, I'm going to go ahead and hold down the brakes, and we're just going to go ahead and smoothly apply power here. We're looking to get about 30 inches of the old mercury there. So now normally what you do is a power check here. You'd set it to 30, and what you'd have to do is you'd have to take a look at how many RPM you got with 30. And you have a little booklet that says, this is how hot it is outside, this is the RPM that you should be getting at this particular time. That's a good check. The reason we do it with 30, believe it or not, is because the superchargers really aren't working very hard here. Looking pretty good. We're now going to smoothly apply up to takeoff power, make sure the two different engines are in sync with each other, which they are. Going to release those brakes, and that's it. Now, in the real one, at least my understanding is, when you do go ahead and stomp the gas, the supercharger sometimes took a little while to kind of catch up to you, so you have to kind of keep an eye on it. So we're going to get going down this hill. What's going to happen is our tail is going to start flying first, and we're going to get this weird little wobbly, and the whole aircraft is going to pitch up, just like that. You have to just kind of catch it. Now, one of the things that makes this aircraft very tricky, and yes, I did not take off before locking the tail wheel. I took off not touching the tail wheel lock. Generally, if it's windy, you're going to need that tail wheel lock. And for those of you who are confused, saying, hey, where's that switch? It's actually underneath this, hence I didn't grab at it. All right, so we're airborne. We're going to go ahead and slap up the landing gear. It's going to make a ton of noise. We have about a 2-minute limit at this power setting, and I'm looking over on the right there, and you can see everything warming up almost instantaneously, so we definitely don't want to chill at it. So we're going to go ahead and do pitch before power, or power before pitch, rather. So we're going to go ahead and pull this into our METO position, which is going to be right at the top of the green arc, and then we're going to go ahead and pull the RPM back as well. This aircraft gets very, very quiet. Now, one important thing, and like I was saying about seating position on this one, is this is actually nose up. It doesn't feel like nose up because the default position for this aircraft kind of positions you looking sort of down. So right now, I'm actually just mostly level. I haven't actually done anything else yet. Let's go ahead and get our RPMs and everything set up. Actually, I can go a little bit higher on the RPM for METO power here. I'll give it just a few. 26 will be pretty good. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So METO is maximum except takeoff power. So this is basically your continuous power, if you want to kind of think about it this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a nice gentle bank and start heading in a general direction. It's an absolutely beautiful day today. It's a little bit getting close to the evening, so you can see it's starting to get a little bit dark. Of course, where I am now, this would all be snow. You wouldn't get all this lovely grass, but that is for another day to set. All right, so now the aircraft is climbing quite smoothly. So now we'll go ahead and set our climb power here. So climb power is basically anything inside the green arc, which is nice. And you can see we're already basically there chilling at that pretty effectively. So I don't need to stress too much. If we wanted to reduce it even more from this point, we certainly could. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce the power now to about 35 inches. Go ahead and reduce it smoothly. There we go. It's about 35 right there. And we're going to go ahead and bring down the RPM to about 2,400 RPM. Hear these superchargers off in the distance slowing down. All right, now it's really, really important that you do set whatever you need as far as trim and stuff like that goes. Don't start sticking your head down and around the cockpit doing your navigation thing before you've had a chance to actually, set all your trims. It's really, really tricky. Now, climb speed in this aircraft, it definitely will vary depending on, what your payload is and everything like that. Generally between 100 and 120 seems to be a pretty sweet spot. If we pull the nose up just a tiny bit more here, yeah, it looks pretty good right there. That's going to get us a little bit steeper of a climb, but again, the trim on this thing is very, very, very slow, so take your time on it. All right, that's looking pretty good. Good time to go ahead and take a look to see what else is going. Somebody forgot to click the secure aircraft button. Oh well. I'm just going to have to freak out the whole time. I like that. We're going to go ahead and close our cowl flaps. We're just going to pop them into the, not the soft position, trail position. And we're just going to keep an eye on that real quick just to make sure that things don't start heating up. Now, a moment ago, I just mentioned just how incredibly easy this thing is to kind of wander off course. Pretty big propellers, not the most stable thing that we get going. All right, so let's talk about navigation now. Now that we've got a pretty gentle climb going up, like I said, nothing too excessive, you'll probably notice, again, I did not position these instruments, that our needles are now pointing in the correct direction. And as a matter of fact, you can see that our needle that's supposed to take us over to Providence, I'm taking a nice gentle right turn here. I'm just going to go ahead and center that needle. And now you treat the VOR exactly the same as you would treat an ADF. Now, for those of you who are not sure how to use ADF, so that's going to be a fun little adventure for you as you kind of explore it directly. So now that we have a nice cruise going on, a nice little climb, everything's all kind of tallied up, our systems are all looking really, really solid. We're not melting or anything like that. We're going to go ahead and play with the automatic pilot here. Now, the automatic pilot on this thing is quite a trip. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and get us nice and level off. I'll try to keep it as trimmed as possible. I'm going to reach and press the or the automatic pilot button. Now, the way this autopilot works is it works by you telling it what your desired angle is, and then you tweak it until it gets exactly what you want it to be. So right now, actually, I'll turn the lights on, make it a little bit easier. You can see its current desired position puts us, a little bit over into that direction. I think the actual desire is, let's call it east-ish. So I'm going to go ahead and just dial this in. Whoop, helps if you do it in the correct direction. Now, notice, there's nothing special going on. It's not like the aircraft is turning. This is just a reference heading. This is an important concept for us. If we actually want to turn the aircraft, we can actually come over here. You're going to notice the way that they did it is they designed it so that there's a heading hold button. What you would do normally, of course, is instead of having the heading hold, you'd have to take this and actually tweak it left or right to go ahead and dial in which heading you want to hold. Now, what you're going to notice is we have pitch hold, which is our default, and then we can define the current pitch right here. So I'm pretty happy with the current pitch that I'm on, but if I wanted to adjust it, I could hold my mouse over that, and by wheeling the mouse wheel up and down, I can actually adjust the pitch the aircraft is traveling at. Now, the interesting thing here, too, like I said, is that normally you'd have to come in here, and there's actually sensitivity options where you can tweak how aggressive the autopilot attempts to hold a particular heading. So, like I said, it's a little old-fashioned, Take a quick look over there. Yeah, everything's cool and all fine. I'm not worried about it too much. So now you're saying, okay, you're at a pretty good altitude there. That's about 4,000 feet. Now, can you go ahead and level us off? Oh, you'd like to level us off, right? You'd like to. And now, of course, you could press that button all afternoon. Nothing's going to happen. Your level here, there is no leveling off option. I can shut the heading hold off. I can, of course, adjust the pitch. Yes, there is no altitude hold on this aircraft. What you would do instead is you come over here and you actually keep tweaking this until you notice that your vertical speed indicator showed us that there was no more vertical speed. So it's a bit of it's a little different. You'd be surprised how close you can get it to almost perfect, by the way. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right, so now that we're all set with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us all ready to go as far as everything for a cruise here. We're going to go ahead and pop those two off for now. We're going to go ahead and reduce our power. We need to keep it in the blue somewhere. I'm going to zoom in a bit. So we're just about there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it down to about, that looks good, about 31, 32. And we're just going to reduce our RPM just a little bit. And yeah, we're just getting into the blue range, which is the cruise range. Nice. So you can see that's all set there. The aircraft is all ready to rock. We're pretty much on course. I'm going to flip my head down here. And we got to come to the right a little bit more. Nothing too excessive, though. Let's try about that much. Oh, that wasn't the right, was it? I got to remember that it is reversed. My bad. All right, so that's nice and cooled off. Let's see what we have on this side of things. Pretty warm. I'm going to leave the cowl flaps where they are. That's fine. We can take the boost pumps off at this time. I've already popped them off before takeoff. Good idea to leave those on during takeoff. That was my bad, but that's what I get for not following a checklist. All right, so you can see right now the aircraft is mostly level. I'm just going to give it just a couple more taps of that elevator pitch control just to try to get us nice and level here. The aircraft will go ahead and turn itself it'll kind of turn itself. And like I said, we're mostly on course and are ready to rock. Speed-wise, it looks like we're pushing, I don't know, you want to call that 165, 170 miles an hour. It's about 140 knots. So we're moving pretty quick, about 200 kph, 210, something like that. So it's not a slow airplane for its age. So as you saw from a video, we got this thing all started up. We're cruising around. Now, some of you are probably saying, what about the fuel? What if I wanted to switch fuel tanks? Sure. So before we get too carried away, let's say that we wanted to switch over to one of the auxiliary tanks, which doesn't carry near as much fuel as the main tanks do. To do that, the step process is very straightforward. We're just going to float our head up. We're going to go ahead and turn on the respective booster pumps, and then we're going to go ahead and select the new fuel tank. Keep in mind, depending on the fuel tank that we select, we might run into a situation where we can either exhaust the fuel or throw off the center of gravity of the entire aircraft while you're kind of goofing around with that. Once you know the engine's not going to shut off on you, you can go ahead and re-engage that, and everything will be perfectly fine as far as that goes. So one last detail, and this is a tricky one, and that's the carburetor heat. Now, one of the things you probably notice is the aircraft, for whatever reason, thinks it needs to go ahead and warm itself up. By the way, notice if I turn carburetor heat on, it spikes. So we have no need for carburetor heat at this time. If you wanted to go ahead and enable the carburetor heat, you really only need to do so in situations where this is showing that it's a little bit closer to the green, which is what we're going to need for landing. Don't forget, of course, if you stick your head up here, there's going to be an automatic switch that you can click, and that will go ahead and trigger that and kind of control it automatically for you, which is kind of slick. Next time, we'll go ahead and take a look at putting this thing on the ground, it's a bit involved. And of course, for those of you who want to try an instrument approach, we'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. Enjoy.